Hey guys, Chosen Nerd here. Welcome everyone to the first episode of Thoughts Coming Out of the Closet. This is my new show where I distract myself from my deeply repressed homoerotic fantasies by just sort of, rambling to the camera. Today we're gonna be talking some politics. That's right. The Chosen Nerd's getting a little political. So today we're actually gonna be diving into the wonderful world of Facebook conspiracy theories and the alt-right. More specifically, I want to talk about the Epoch Times, an alt-right newspaper that is widely shared on Facebook and Twitter. Really, I want to talk about this newspaper outlet because yesterday I saw one of their videos, which was uploaded, 12 hours ago, called 2020 Election Update, Day 8, Trump's Possible Victory. For my viewers that have apparently not been paying attention, I don't know if you even exist. Biden won the election. Every news outlet, for the most part, has already called it for Biden. Trump has lost, although he obviously is refusing to concede and has actually been pressing several lawsuits against certain swing states that he claims have mass voter fraud, although there is actually zero evidence to substantiate these claims. But here we are. We have the Epoch Times making a video called Trump's Possible Victory.
I just wanted to give you a quick reminder. The media in this country do not decide who the winner of the election is. That is the role of the Electoral College.
Media outlets can easily call who the president is because if you just look at the popular votes in different states, you can see how the Electoral College is going to vote in those states. Of course, there could be electoral voters that, go against the popular vote, but in a lot of states that's actually illegal, and that very rarely actually happens. The point is that the media has always called the presidency. In 2016, none of these right-wing outlets were claiming that, no, Trump has not been called yet because the media doesn't call the presidency. That wasn't a thing.
But if you look at the actual facts, President Donald Trump still has a clear path to victory.
So this is the map that I saw that made me want to really dive into the Epoch Times and figure out what the hell is going on here. As you can see, in the states where Joe Biden has been called by a majority of news outlets, what the Epoch Times have done, instead of calling it for Biden, they have marked them with little court things because Trump is filing a lawsuit, which I find really funny because already a majority of Trump's lawsuits have been immediately dismissed because the Trump campaign cannot provide any actual evidence of voter fraud in these states. This guy looks like Chris Ray Gun if he didn't stop making those SJW cringe videos. This is like an alternate timeline, dark universe Chris Ray Gun right here.
This is your 2020 election update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times.
Oh, it's Epoch Times. I could have sworn in another video that I watched they said Epoch Times, but maybe it's Epic. I don't know. I'm probably going to go back and forth throughout this video, so get ready for that. This is not my first encounter with the Epoch Times. Not so much recently, but for a long time this year, I was getting a lot of YouTube ads for the Epoch Times. I'm sure some of you, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen them too.
Oh my gosh, we totally forgot to give Dad a Christmas gift.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
What does he even want? Isn't he always going on about how his local paper has become super biased, slanted, and he almost can't read the thing?
Wait! I've been reading this amazing newspaper lately. I think he'll love it. The Epoch Times. It doesn't have any spun facts and it doesn't push any hidden agendas. And they investigate stories like Spygate, the real story of collusion.
No.
What's really
They
going
don't
on
spin
at the
facts.
southern border? How communist ideology has been subverting our nation and
There's no
compromising our
bias
children's
here at all.
future.
It's crazy, because it was the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up that led to this whole pandemic.
What makes you say that?
This.
You can actually buy this timeline of what they call the CCP virus, which is of course the coronavirus. You'll catch on soon that the Epoch Times likes to use the buzz phrase, the Chinese Communist Party, instead of just saying Chinese government, China, anything more simple than the CCP. Yeah, the Epoch Times made a 56-minute long documentary called The Cover-Up of the Century on the coronavirus, again called the CCP virus. I'm not going to watch the whole thing because I don't absolutely hate myself, but from what I've read, this documentary, as well as a newspaper published by the Epoch Times, both claim that the Chinese Communist Party may have actually developed COVID-19 as a bioweapon and used it against, the West. Everything we've watched so far is sort of standard right-wing talking points, kind of what you would expect from a paper like this, on caliber with Breitbart or like InfoWars. But then this introduction takes a interesting turn.
Our staff members in China were jailed and tortured for their reporting, some for as long as 10 years. Because our founders believed in truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, the principles of the spiritual practice Falun Gong.
I wasn't really expecting, any spirituality in this advertisement for a newspaper. So I decided to look into what exactly Falun Gong is. I just sort of assumed it was some sort of, as the video said, spiritual practice. I didn't know if it was some form of meditation or something. But no, actually, it's a cult. So Falun Gong is a cult that originated in China in the 90s. It was founded by a man named Li Hongzhi. The belief system of Falun Gong isn't actually anything too extreme on the surface. It's essentially just a mix of Buddhism and Taoism. It's focused on meditation, cutting off material goods, that sort of thing. It's all in order to achieve some form of spiritual enlightenment. But really where this religious group gets kind of weird is with the role of Li Hongzhi. There's not really a lot known about the man himself. He's a very secretive person. But what we do know is that the members of Falun Gong essentially think that Li Hongzhi is like a heavenly presence. So there is a lot of debate on whether or not this group is a cult or just a new religious movement. This whole situation with Falun Gong is honestly a very morally gray area. Essentially what happened is the Chinese government labeled Falun Gong as a evil cult and religiously persecuted against them. The Chinese government committed absolute atrocities against members of this group. There was conversion programs done to try and turn them into atheists. Many members of Falun Gong, while in prison, were killed. It was even reported that many Falun Gong prisoners were used for non-consensual organ harvesting, which allegedly is still going on today in China, not only with Falun Gong prisoners, but as well as Muslim citizens being put in concentration camps. So eventually Li Hongzhi, the leader of the Falun Gong religious movement, was actually banned from China. So he fled the country, he moved to America, and became a resident in New York. This religious group has faced a lot of hardships, a lot of unfair treatment, to say the least, from the Chinese government. And the Chinese government absolutely should be held responsible for these actions and should rightfully be criticized. However, the issue with Falun Gong isn't that, they rightfully do not like the Chinese government. The issue is that in order to get their message out, they dive into a lot of unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. One of the main political beliefs of Falun Gong is that the former CCP chairman, Jiang Zemin, is a toad demon. So you might be wondering, okay, what does Falun Gong, what does Li Hongzhi have to do with the Epoch Times? Yeah, so that's a good question that I'm about to answer. So basically, when Li Hongzhi came over to America, he decided that his next mission would be to get the West to understand the evils of the Chinese Communist Party. And he figured the best way to do that is to invest and create media. So he founded a little paper called the Epoch Times. When it first started off, it was actually just a paper in Chinese for Chinese Americans about the actions of the Chinese government. Since its foundation, it has since spread into an actual newspaper that reports on all issues. And reportedly, it was actually fairly bipartisan. in terms of domestic American politics up until 2015, when a certain little daddy decided to run for presidency. When that happened, Li Hongzhi declared that he had a vision that Trump was sent from heaven to destroy once and for all the Chinese Communist Party. Li Hongzhi wanted to drastically change the direction of the Epoch Times, and ever since then, it's pretty much evolved into the Epoch Times we know and love today, diving into all sorts of right-wing hoopla, such as QAnon, Spygate. Ever since that pivot in 2015, 2016 of pro-Trump rhetoric, the Epoch Times has massively grown its subscriber base. It's become the second most shared right-wing news source on Facebook. Trump's Facebook page has shared stories from the newspaper at least half a dozen times, according to this NBC report on the paper. And Donald Trump Jr. has also tweeted several of their stories. So this is all concerning, to say the least, that a cult has managed to create one of the most popular right-wing newspapers in America. But even more interestingly, the Epoch Times is not the only Falun Gong media enterprise. Falun Gong also created a live performance show called Shen Yun. It's a traveling dance show that is toured across over 100 different cities across several continents. I think watching the trailer is really interesting because it just sort of markets itself as like a traditional Chinese dance show and looks kind of cool. You know, if I saw this trailer and had like money and time and nothing better to do, I might go see it. You know, it looks kind of neat. But then you go to the show and you realize, oh wait, this is like a cult thing. Here's a quote that I liked from Walter Whitmore from The Ledger. "We paid a premium for seats that would provide us an excellent view of Chinese tradition. Instead, we contributed unwittingly to a religious movement that denies evolution and science, claims the earth was inhabited by aliens, demonizes atheists and homosexuals, and condemns mixed marriages." So apparently every year, the performance of Shen Yun is like a different show, but even in 2019, last year, the show still had scenes condemning same-sex marriages, interracial marriages, atheism, a whole bunch of weird political shit that no one signed up for. They just wanted to see some traditional Chinese dancing. But instead, they get a scene depicting Chairman Mao appearing, and the sky turned black. The city in the digital backdrop was obliterated by an earthquake, then finished off by a communist tsunami. A red hammer and sickle glowed in the center of the wave, a huge bearded face disappearing in the water, a tsunami with the face of Karl Marx. So even though it's weird and, you know, kind of funny that the Epoch Times, one of the biggest right-wing media outlets, is owned by a fucking cult, honestly, the fact that a cult owns it doesn't really change anything for us. What's more concerning to me is Falun Gong's and Li Hongzhi's motivations here. Any fair or reputable news source should be calling out the Chinese government on its shit. Because, let's be honest, they do a lot of bad shit. They're not good. But I think it's also very apparent that Li does not have good intentions here. Yes, it's true that he and his religious movement were wrongfully persecuted against by the Chinese government. But it seems that based on the teachings of this religious group and the messaging of the Epoch Times and Shen Yun, that Li doesn't understand what led to his religious persecution. When you pair the fact that the Epoch Times only refers to China as the Chinese Communist Party with the scene of Karl Marx killing a bunch of characters in Shen Yun, you can see that there is a very clear anti-communist message in this cult. And what I think is so strange about that is that communism has absolutely nothing to do with the wrongs that were committed against this group. I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys that communism is just a theory of economics and has really nothing to do with religious persecution or racial persecution or ethnic persecution or any form of persecution, really, I guess, except for, like, rich people, if you want to make that argument. I think if Li had good intentions here for criticizing the Chinese government, he wouldn't also be praising President Trump and his actions. So while I was finishing up the research for this video, China actually fired pro-democratic and pro-Hong Kong officials, essentially ending the conflict between China and Hong Kong and ending Hong Kong's independence. This is an obvious authoritarian move by the Chinese government to gain power in an area where they did not have any. Meanwhile, in the States, Trump has refused to concede presidential power and has been firing officials in the Pentagon and replacing them with loyalists, seemingly attempting to set the stage for a soft coup. Obviously, the surrounding context of these two situations are super different, but the desired outcomes of both parties are extremely similar. Yet Trump is obviously not a communist. In fact, he labels most of his political opponents as such. If anything, he is just about the most capitalist a politician can get. Yet he is doing the same thing as the Chinese Communist Party. It's almost like China and Trump have a lot more in common than the Epoch Times thinks. Yet even though these two governments are doing the exact same thing, I can guarantee you that Lee's different news outlets are only reporting on one in a negative light. So if you made it this far into this video, first of all, thank you for listening to my rambling. It's just stream of consciousness. And second of all, the only thing I'm going to ask of you is that you just double check what you're reading, what you're watching. Because if diving down this rabbit hole has taught me anything, it's that you never know where information is coming from unless you look.
I've been part of the Epoch Times for nearly a decade because I've seen there's no other major media outlet in the world as devoted to real journalism. The Epoch Times has never had any corporate or political agenda. We only serve our readers, and we'll stay that way, no matter what.
We connected the dots around Spygate, the Obama administration's elaborate efforts against Trump's 2016 campaign.